All right. Well, once again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining our weekly technical consult meeting. Today is April 22nd, 2022. Um, Today's focus is on the standards. As we remember, we made a decision earlier on to kind of do a bi-weekly or a 1 week of focus on features, another one on standards. Last week we were focused on features. In my absence, Joe facilitated the technical consult meeting, but I'm back now and happy to report back from Paris conference, and we're ready to start working on the standards. Before we get into the details, I wanted to follow up on a couple of topics with the technical consult. First of all, the last meeting format was conducted in the form of a workshop where we conducted individual work sessions for about half an hour, as Joe was explaining it to me, and it seemed like the council responded, the members responded really well to that process. I just wanted to just get everyone's sort of feedback on that. Is that a desirable way to sort of conduct the sessions moving forward, sort of as a workshop sessions working on individual components during the session, or is approach that we're originally thinking about of kind of taking homework back and then coming back and reviewing the results, is the approach that you would prefer to keep for standards or features or both? What do you think, like Jordan, from your perspective, for example, Naresh, what do you think is do you guys like working the workshop approach better?
Yeah, I think workshop approach is better, and even better would be yesterday's approach of like creating conference like um, some voice chat group. We can hang out with them, whoever is interested in one particular topic, and we can divide these topics in parallel. And yeah, at the end we can like sync up.
Okay. Um, I think the only thing that I would raise maybe as something to think about, maybe not a concern, but you know, the difference here is that this might require, some components, especially on the standard side, might require some more time allocated to sitting down and thinking about it. So one of the things that we may want to consider is change the format of the council meetings to be maybe not as often, but a longer for a period of time. So maybe do a 2 hours workshop, but every 2 weeks where we can really sit down and spend some so significant time focusing on any one standard or any one feature of the standard, um, with obvious understanding that just 1 hour or half an hour that we would allocate or 40 minutes that we allocate may not be sufficient to really dig into the details, so to speak. So I'm certainly very open to that. Maybe we can continue a certain way, unless people have recommendations to make some changes to adjust, or we can come back to that once we have a better understanding what works best.
Yeah, Chris or Nestor, do you guys have thoughts?
I kind of tend to lean more towards the homework approach just because I think that we can get more done um, when we're not on the spot, maybe, and then like just using the syncs, which I think are expensive, to just discuss what like our findings and thoughts. But those are just my 2 cents. I'm not opposed to the workshop approach either.
And maybe it's a combination of, right? Maybe once we get in the good cadence, there will be some takeaways that to complete, finalize, and then do a quick review session. But maybe sort of getting into a swing of things during the workshop is going to help everyone to get into it, so to speak, right? All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and I think also once we start getting a bulk of documentation, we can talk about what's the best way to organize it. I think we've made a decision that everything is going to stay within the specification repo, and we've discussed in the past. But the organization, the branch structure, or the folder structure is something that still needs to be derived, but also can be flexible. We can updating it as it makes sense. So I think at some point I want to have that conversation, but let's get some meat, so to speak, on the bones, and then we can adjust our understanding around the structure um, of the organization of the documents.
Yeah,
So
I agree with that.
why
Yeah,
don't,
and
yeah,
I would just add that I think that we should try and optimize for anything that helps us get, more on paper, ju just like you had said. Because I think right now, like we're very busy, like developing throughout the week. And so, like writing these specifications kind of falls by the wayside as far as priority, since we're still trying to like get a first release out the door. And so I think that yeah, any way that we can facilitate this to like move the standards work farther so that we can get the specification out sooner. Yeah.
would it be helpful if we had a tech writer be involved to help organize the documentation in addition
Mm,
to, but at the end of the day, the key thought is going to have to come from the experts, right? Which is the technical council members.
yeah, exactly. So I don't think that having more people that are not core developers involved
Help,
would,
yeah.
yeah, help. Yeah.
That's what I was thinking as well. All right. Well, why don't we get into it? The more time we spend on this stuff, so let's just make. So let's get in. Let's take a look at the priorities first. So we look at the standards. We've prioritized URI standard, and there's been, Jordan obviously you've put together this high-level description, some sections here, initial tasks. So my question to you guys, do you want to do like a breakout session similar way that we've done yesterday, or just collectively just start maybe simpler as a group, just pick one standard and start start decomposing it into sections and then identifying what content needs to go into each section. Maybe,
Yeah, so with this one specifically, I know that Yuri and I have talked about this a few times in the past, but um, when he mentioned that he wanted to be involved working on this, we said that we were going to schedule a call, but things got away from us and we ended up not scheduling that call yet. And so I think that, yeah, the status update on this one would be okay. Like, we still need to schedule like a first working group to actually flesh this out more than it already is. And so I can DM Yuri right now and try to get a time scheduled with him.
okay.
And yeah, also if anyone else wants to be involved in this, please just say something. But yeah, I think that this would be best like taken through like a working session with Yuri, and anyone else outside of this call.
But unfortunately, Yuri's here. He's not here right now, so we can't do it then with for Yuri. Maybe let's pick something else.
Yeah, yeah. And like thinking of it as like a process, right? So it's like for the URI one, the update is that we need to have that first working session to build the first draft. It's like, okay, we haven't done that yet. Let's get that scheduled. And then we can find another issue that we think is high priority and that people here, want to contribute to, and then we can figure out whether yeah, whether they want to schedule time for it, or yeah, just like, yeah, what's the next best thing, I guess.
And by the way, we can help but facilitate those design sessions too. So maybe Joe and I will work together with you and Yuri to help facilitate that meeting, and then maybe help take notes and things like that, so we can get recording going and participate. Or do you want to just kind of go into a cave and just work the two of you?
No, I think that's helpful. Yeah, if you guys want to facilitate yeah, like the
The
design
work
process, like the
the work
authoring
session.
process.
Hmm.
Yeah. I think that would definitely be helpful. Yeah.
So maybe we can then help, organize. Our help can be going beyond just facilitating this meeting, actually start facilitating a breakout sessions as well. maybe one, two or three a week, and this way we can sort of make a more deliberate progress. That's another approach, right? So maybe let's try different things and see. We'll schedule the work session, try to facilitate a URI standard definition work session for next week, um, and maybe one more. Let's pick one more. So what? Maybe how about this? Can we spend right now 15 minutes going to and assign priorities for this, for the work sessions, and then we can organize based on priorities. Because that was one of the things we wanted to do, but we never completed that. Let's start with priorities and the assignments. Well, let's start with the rep protocol. What do you think is a priority on this is? Maybe we just can go around and just call it out.
Yeah, I think that it's pretty high priority to define what even we mean by this, because there's a few things that I think would come to mind for different people of like what is all kind of encapsulated in this rap protocol. So um,
Started, so
yeah,
call it priority one, right?
sure,
Everybody's
yeah.
agree with? And who wants to be involved in this discussion? So we'll set up a separate conversation for rep protocol and try that.
Yeah, I'll be involved. Yeah, anybody else, please?
Yeah, I also.
Like to also.
Sorry, so I picked Niraj, I picked Jordan, who what's the okay, sorry, still shaking on the
Me.
names. Me, thanks. All right,
Oh, Namesti, Nestor.
Nestor, thank you.
Yep.
Nemisty, right?
Yep.
Um, URI resolver. How would we want to prioritize this?
I think that this one is it's high. Like we first need to define the URI standard, and then the URI resolver would come after that.
So it has dependency, right?
Yeah.
I don't think we created the standard dependency. Well, let's keep it at high. Um, create notes column real quick. Could be useful. URI
Yeah.
result in the wrong place, of course. Depending on URI standard. And who do we want to have ownership of this? Who wants to be involved in the URI resolver?
I think that Yuri should be kind of the owner here, since he worked on this part of the toolchain.
Let's see. Okay. Anybody else needs to be part of this conversation? Let's keep it at that. Moving into client standards, starting with caching.
Yeah, so this is something that we haven't even really haven't even kind of designed as a we haven't finished the design as a feature. And so it's kind of hard to actually define this as a standard yet. So I I guess that a way to say this is that
We can
this
prioritize it lower, right?
yeah, and yeah, I feel like for these standards we want to have like one working implementation already kind of created. so that that way we can build the standard based off of that, like with that knowledge. Um, and so yeah, it's like it's missing an initial implementation to go off of, I guess you could say.
So I'm
Do
just put.
Yeah, does everyone kind of agree with that, that we should have a working implementation but before we create a standard?
So that's true for
Yeah,
all of the client standards right now?
um no, no, that's certainly not true for all these.
Okay, so this is just specifically for caching.
Yeah. Yeah, does anyone else have thoughts on this? I see that Nestor's maybe trying to talk, but I can't hear you.
Oh, no, no, no. It's
Oh, okay.
I agree. Yeah.
All right, so let's go down to the list, UI resolution.
Yeah, so this is basically using the URI resolver standard.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm trying to figure out, like, I guess what the difference in this is from the URI resolver standard, but I actually, yeah, so this would be kind of like an umbrella um around URI resolver and the URI standard. So
So maybe the same,
um
hi, and assigned to Yuri.
yeah, and I would maybe put it at medium, 'cause we need to do URI and URI resolver first. Um,
Invocation.
I can take this. And I think that this one is high, or like the critical or whatever is, yeah, okay. And this is certainly something that we can define today.
Okay, so maybe we'll spend another 10 minutes going through prioritization, and then we can come back to that, and then spend the remaining half an hour focusing on the invocation standard. Sounds good for the plan for today?
Sure, yeah.
So let's continue down this list configuration.
Yeah, I would put this maybe as high. Um, it's something that is pretty well defined so far. But it certainly may change a little bit over time, but um, I think that the general pieces are there. Um, and I know that, like, a lot of us here have kind of messed with the client config code. So I'm curious if someone would want to kind of take this and break apart the different pieces and write it out.
Yeah, I and Yuri has worked on client specification, you know, config builder, and all the different things. I think we can talk on those.
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing here, so that when you're working on it, it's a little easier. So when writing these specifications, we should try to make it as implementation detail agnostic as possible. And so, for example, the config builder stuff is awesome, but I don't think we'll want to include that in the standard. Instead, we would just kind of include, you must be able to configure the client's environments for wrappers, or the client's URI redirects, or things like that, right? So doing it without any kind of specific implementation details.
Did we? I heard Yuri got volunteered, right?
Yeah, I think that Niraj was saying that he would feel comfortable taking this.
Plugins.
Yeah, so not to call on you again, Niraj, but I know that you've done a ton of work here recently. Is this something that you would want to try to spec out?
Yeah, sure.
And what would be the priority on the plugins?
Yeah, I would keep it high. So yeah, pretty good. What do you think, Toad?
Okay.
Yeah, I think that it's high along with configuration. Yep.
By the way, did we decide who wants to? We didn't decide on caching because it's low. Okay, let's continue down the list. WebAssembly run. So now we're on WebAssembly runtime standards.
I'd volunteer for that one. I as in Nestor, MST. Yep.
And what would we prioritize that as?
I think it's a medium one at this point. Would you
Really?
guys agree?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking critical because it's kind of like the backbone of the whole thing, and I feel like it's pretty well defined. So it's something that yeah, there's not much
All right. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Let's mark it as one.
Anybody else, Namaste, you would like to help? Or anybody else would like to participate in this? Or this is just good as is?
Yeah, I'd like to be added. I think that sounds awesome.
Um, Anybody else? Okay. Serialization standard?
I'd like to participate in that one as well.
Me
Namesti. Yeah,
too.
Sorry, who was the second person?
Jordan.
Jordan.
I'd also like to join in on that.
Yeah, I also like to join serial.
Lots of interest. Awesome. Yeah, so it seems like this one would be a critical one as well.
Sorry, who? I'm missing fourth person.
Yeah, Chris.
Chris with a K.
Every developer here want to join in.
Is this correct, Chris?
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, and this is critical. Let me I think this is a good start. We'll come back to prioritizations. I think that gives us a clear number of critical components that we can start working over the next couple of weeks. My question to you, really quick, from the logistical standpoint, what's the best way to organize meetings with you guys? Do you have a calendar link that you would like to set up, or we can just do a quick follow up, just aside the fine to meet meeting. What is there a preferred methodology for you guys that we want to establish for meeting
I think
schedules?
that I think that the when to meet
When to
links
meet?
are pretty useful.
Yep, fantastic. Then we'll do that.
Yeah, and just so that we don't like overload people, I feel like maybe if we spun up like 3 of these, maybe if that kind of includes everyone here, being like the 4 core developers that were assigned to these. Yeah, I feel like just doing an initial set that gets everyone involved, but doesn't have people kind of overloaded with kind of too much to think about. I think that would be best.
So you said three to start with, 3 per week. I think that may be actually um, heavy. I was thinking maybe 1 or 2 a week, or
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
start
What
start
whatever
with
you
two.
think is best. It was just a number.
Okay,
Uh,
let's start with two, and then if it and I'll touch base with everyone after. We'll touch base to see if that was too much overload. Not there's more capacity. I understand we want to speed things up, so let's try it out.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think it's really helpful for you and Joe to help with these sessions. Because I think that kind of organizing the thoughts and doing it in a cohesive way is like a whole other side to the problem. And being able to kind of extract the things that are kind of floating around in our heads, and yeah, bringing some structure to it. I think that could really help speed up the process so that you know there's less time spent on figuring out what the structure should look like, I guess.
Yep. All right. So with that being said, why don't we try it out with the first one? You said we wanted to try with the which one you said that you wanted to start one with the invocation standard, correct?
Yeah, I think that's something that would be pretty easy
Why don't we do
to start
this?
with.
Let's kick that off. We'll spend the next half an hour working on it. Let's me go ahead and start the HackMD note so we can all contribute to that. So let's start a new note and call it the invocation standard. Um, And then of course I'll consolidate everything. We'll just use this note just for as the for the work session. Let me go ahead and then make that publicly available. Everyone. Well, let's make it signed end users if that's okay. Just a little bit of extra security. Copy. Um, I'll paste it to the technical console. Please go ahead and join the note, and also paste it here in the description later on. So from the format standpoint, we'll start with a um, quick description, I would assume, right? And maybe a blurb. And then at the end, we'll have the action items.
Yeah, don't want to recall anything, but shouldn't it be K instead of C in the invocation standard if we are telling it like that in the tool chain?
Hey, it's kind of hard to make out what you're saying, Naresh.
Yeah, I'll write it down.
Where did you type it, Niraj? Okay. Yeah. So I could maybe I think maybe what might be helpful here to kind of flesh out everything that's needed is maybe if I share my screen and just kind of walk through the relevant code. And as I kind of explain how it's all working, we can basically kind of call out different pieces of it that can be a part of like a part of the standard. Does that sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. Let me just prepare my desktop to share 1 second. Okay. Um, so it would be really helpful if as cause yeah, like when looking at this doc, I've started to try and do an outline, but this is probably a me problem, but it was kind of hard to think of it without kind of just like thought vomiting. And so I think it might be helpful as I go through this, like if you guys, notice anything that I'm saying that is like a fundamental piece, to try and just jot it down. Okay, so basically, what we mean by invocation is just the act of, actually calling into the client. And so if we go to like, for instance, the test here, if we look for like client.invoke, so this is how we call a wrapper, right? We do client.invoke, and we specify what the wrapper is by giving it URI. We specify the module that we want to invoke. So this is saying like we want to call into the mutation module, or in the future when we have user-defined module, this could be like swap or write or something like that. And then lastly, we have a function that we're calling, which here is called method. And then we have our arguments. So here we have input, and so these are our input arguments for the deploy contract function. And in all of these kind of options, I've kind of added as like that section, which is the if we actually check out the core types for this, when we look at the invoke function, oops, sorry, it's in invoke handler. When we look at the invoke function, we have our options here. So these are our invoke options. So that was kind of like the first part of, I guess, standardizing this, is saying that all, Polywrap clients should support these general options, because these are like the bare minimum options that are needed to be able to perform an invocation. So that was kind of the first step. And then I guess that, a second thing that can be added to the list, not necessarily second in priority, but something that came up is what the result of this looks like. So, the result has, errors and data. We can see that here in the typings for the invoke function. We have invoke API result with data and error. So this is something that could also be standardized. And then next, I think, kind of like the process around actually performing invocation, I think is an interesting one. So if we look kind of under the covers at the client to see what's happening here, if we go into the invoke function, inside of invoke, basically what it's doing is it will load the wrapper, and then once it has loaded the wrapper, and this could be a plugin, it could be a WebAssembly wrapper, and so once it's loaded it, then it goes ahead and it calls the invoke function on it. And so this invocation on a wrapper is different from the invocation on a plugin. And so if we look at the actual implementation of these for plugin or WebAssembly, oops. If we look at the invocation of the WebAssembly wrapper, here, basically for WebAssembly, what it does is it first basically fetches the WebAssembly module. And so once it has like the WebAssembly bytecode, it will then create a new instance of that WebAssembly module with the necessary imports for the module. And so these imports are actually a part of the WebAssembly runtime standard. So this is not something that we have to define here when talking about invocation necessarily, but we can talk about it. We can just basically point to the WebAssembly runtime standard and say, hey, read here for the details around the kind of the WebAssembly boundary. And then after we create that instance, we first load the environment into the WASM module. So here in this function, sanitize and load environment, it's again like using the WASM runtime standard functions for loading the environment and for sanitizing it. So these are two more functions that are part of the WASM runtime. And so yeah, like we download the WebAssembly, we load the environment into the WebAssembly, and then after that we call the invocation function. And so when we call this invocation function, there like this will lead to the kind of the execution thread going into the WebAssembly module. So this is like a blocking call. And inside of the WebAssembly module, it could basically do sub invocations. So this is probably like another piece to the standard that we'll have to flesh out more. but it's yeah, just adding that as a note here, like after we actually call into the WebAssembly code, it that WebAssembly code could call back out and perform sub invocations before that initial invoke has finished. So yeah, it's just think of a traditional call stack. But yeah, so once this initial function call finishes, once the top of the invocation stack finishes, we get the result. What we do is when we process the, okay, yeah, we can leave this out of it. So once we have that result, we just go ahead and we return that back to the user. And I think that kind of like the last piece here is that we support an option for no decode. So I'm not sure if this is necessarily relevant for the invocation standard, but actually, yeah, I think it is. Basically, here we should say that uh, the WebAssembly invocation should support the option to not decode the result, meaning that it doesn't deserialize the message pack buffer. And this is a really useful piece because if we're performing calls between WebAssembly modules, we don't need to do any decoding because we can just take that message pack buffer and send it over to the other WebAssembly module. So yeah, the no decode option is needed for efficient sub invocations between WebAssembly modules. And then yeah, that's kind of the process for the WebAssembly side of things, and then we could get into like the plugin side of things, but I feel like that might be a good place to stop, and then to now I guess look back at where we're at. So yeah, and
So I've been taking some notes
awesome.
for the outline.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. And so yeah, we have like the invocation results. We have invocation results, and then okay, so here this is like you know so here let's just say just to reorganize this a little bit. We have the options. We have the loading of a wrapper. So I guess like wrapper load, and then we have wrapper invoke, which within that could be two different things for WASM and for plugin. And for WASM, we have this. We have WASM load, WASM instance create, and then we have load and sanitize and load environment, which this is optional. And then we have location, call WASM invoke function, and then return results and support no decode. And then could sub invoke, and then let's see. So WASM load, WASM instance create. Okay. And then here, I guess we just add a reference to the WASM runtime. Okay, and then we return result, and then here, to do. Okay, we got this. We got this. We got this. Receive results. Return back to users. Code option. Cool. Awesome. And then wrapper invocation. And then I guess here it's invocation result here at the very end. Reference runtime. Okay, yeah, all right here. So boom, wasn't boundary, and then do that. And this is for import, environment, invoke, reference wasn't runtime. Okay. And then for sub invocations, whoops. For sub invocations, I feel like that can be yeah, probably like its own point, maybe nested under here.
Mm-hmm.
Because plugins and WebAssembly can do sub.
Okay.
All right, cool.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
So that gives us an outline. So my question now is that, when we actually write up the document for each component of the outline, what are the key components for each bullet point on the outline? Would be some sort of a description of what that specifically that component means, and then with some code samples. So that would be the work, is to describe it. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, when we structure our workshops, right, we're going to go through each component of the outline, discuss it, determine how to properly describe it for the users, and then maybe some takeaway from homework is to provide some code samples describing different aspects of the invocation options, right?
Yeah, so I think that a good reference is like, if you look at like the Ethereum yellow paper, or like, other specifications, they will use, they'll use pseudocode to describe kind of like the data structures and the algorithms being implemented. And they do this so that it's implementation language agnostic and as kind of general as possible. So I think that we would want to do the same. And this will be like a learning experience for us of like how to kind of like boil down the implementation details that we have in our code to something that's like super easy to understand and re-implement elsewhere. So
Okay.
I so to give a quick example, for the client types, we talked about these options here. So here's like our invoke options that we support today. We could just copy and paste this over and stick it in the spec, or we could re-implement it as like some sort of simple
Pseudocode.
as yeah. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, I'll like I want to do a little research to figure out like what the cleanest way to do this would be. But yeah, that's the general idea.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. Does anyone else have any thoughts? Any suggestions for like next steps we should take with this? Like, or do you think that the outline we have is pretty comprehensive and we just need to fill it out? Go ahead and review it all.
I think that the general outline is fine. However, and I know that this may sound basic, but do we have like a golden example of how the final spec should look like? Because I think it'd be like really helpful to um, orient my thought process towards
Yeah, I'm struggling with the same thing. I don't think that's a basic question. I think that here, so you know, the Ethereum yellow paper and like the Bitcoin white paper, like those are the those are things that we can maybe reference, but it's definitely like quite a bit more technical on like kind of like the math side of things than ours. Here, so please feel free to shout out any examples that you guys can think of. I also really like the GraphQL spec. I'm gonna paste a link of that here.
What do you guys think of ERC standard?
Of which standard?
ERC.
ERC standard. Yeah, so like the ERC 20 standard or something like that.
Yeah, there are many ERC standards.
Yes, yeah. I think that sounds great. I agree with that. Let me just find
Because they aren't too mathematical related. And to it's it's simple and easy to read.
Yes, I definitely agree. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so I think probably like the ERC standards is probably the best one. Also, there's another one which is the chain agnostic standards. I'm gonna try and find those.
Also, iPhone 10 are also very good.
Sorry, I couldn't understand what you were saying there.
Yeah, Python PEP standards are also.
Ah, yes. Here, so if you have a link for that, please feel free to share it. Oh, PEPs. Got it. Very cool. PEP. Here we go. Okay. I think that these are enough to go off of. Cool. All right. Sweet. So yeah, I'm feeling kind of motivated to flesh this out further. So I think that after we all leave here, I'm gonna try and put more ink to paper and get this fleshed out a little bit more, and I'll send it around later today for some initial feedback.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I'll go ahead and start scheduling some break-off sessions over the next week. So I'll work with you guys based on our prioritizations that we've determined. I'll also organize all of our notes and we'll continue evolving the standards, the repo with all of these notes being organized as well as the final standard documents being organized as well. We'll go from there. I'm sure we can agree on the spelling terminology as well. All right, I think that any other questions, recommendations for next session? All right.
No, I think this is really exciting. This is gonna definitely help push this forward quite a bit. Awesome.
Amazing. Well, one step at a time. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'm going to stop
Thanks,
recording
Eugene.
now.